All right, here we go in three, two, one. What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Sports Medicine Broadcast, a podcast to promote and improve your practice as an athletic trainer. Today, Deanna, Kelsey, and Jennifer share their stories of adoption and foster care as athletic trainers and how that has shaped their lives and the care that they're able to provide and the connection they're able to build with their student athletes and the people around them. As you guys know, I am one girl right now. We've had a previous set, and it's obviously an important topic to me, but it also changes the way that I look at and treat other people. You know, even just with an incident that just recently happened in Texas high school football where there was a player that tackled a referee, you think, well, that guy's just a piece of garbage, but then you stop and think, well, maybe he's getting beat at home. And so just the trainings that you go through with foster care, not making any excuses for any, the foster care and just understanding, but then also opening up the conversation and the opportunity to ask and to share and to know what's going on inside of that system. So I'm here in Texas. Deanna's in Louisiana currently, and Kelsey is in Oklahoma. Is that right, Kelsey?
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. And so our stories and situations may be slightly different based on the laws, and obviously it'll be dependent there. This is sportsmedicinebroadcast.com/adopted ATs. Again, sportsmedicinebroadcast.com/adopted ATs. Jennifer Reeling is supposed to be joining us. I'm not sure where she is at this moment, but if she joins in, then it'll be Jennifer. Oh, I think she just joined in. There we go. And so, again, sportsmedicinebroadcast.com/adopted ATs. So I'm thankful for y'all joining and sharing, being willing to share your story, and again, answer any questions that people have. And I know, Deanna, you have a whole following or fanfare probably watching live on Facebook. So thank you so much for that. So
You're welcome.
why don't you go ahead and start with your story and just kind of wherever you want to start, and then we'll move on. We'll go on from there. So
Okay. Well, I'll try to make it as quick as possible. If my birth mom was one of the ones that said that she would actually be listening today in California if she set her alarm and woke up in time. But so I think I'm probably part of the 1% that has a really positive story in the sense that I have a relationship now with both of my biological parents. And obviously my parents are good with it. Their relationship with me, they, you know, I don't correct people, but I gently remind people that I have parents and I have my birth parents, and my birth parents know where they are in my life, and they're obviously wonderful humans. So, but they both know that I wouldn't be where I am without the sacrifice that they made. So when you asked us to do this, and one of your notes was something along the lines of like, how does it improve your practice? Or I started really thinking about just like my story as a whole, and my story as a whole, really is intertwined with my career as an athletic trainer. Back in 2008, I was questioning, and I had always been told I was adopted. That was never a secret in our house. I didn't really understand the concept until I was 7 years old, on the same day that unfortunately I found out other mythological creatures that were told about that bring eggs and presents weren't real, that I was adopted. Devastated. Because they were all picking on their younger brothers and sisters. Because if you looked at our family, I look just like my parents. My brother looks a little bit different because he's got blonde hair and he's adopted as well. But it was just a total shocker to me. And then I realized when I got home, my mom was like, well, I've always told you, you know. And so then after that, I thought it was pretty cool, and it was something that I could, I don't think I ever went through a phase really where I used it against my parents, but as I got older, I ended up having a desire to find my biological parents because I started to have some health issues when I was in grad school. And in 2008, I decided to commit and talk to my parents about that. And I talked to my mom one night, and my mom is a brave. We went and got my adoption folder, prayed about it. She asked me if I wanted any of the paperwork, and I said, yeah, I really like this sheet of paper that talks about their likes and dislikes. And she paid it. It said birth mother's address at time of birth. And so I had a BlackBerry at the time, and I did a cool white pages reverse search, and my grandparents lived there. So I sent them a letter. When I was in grad school, hustling my butt at football practice one day about the being intertwined, and it's grandparents on the other end of the line while I'm in the training room. So from Jump Street, I'm able to, I went out to for the next really 6 weeks. It ended up being a relationship. I'm sorry, my dogs are barking. It ended up being a relationship that just slowly started to develop. And hey, Henry. And so, and then a year and a half later, again, here I am working a basketball game.
You need to step away for a second.
I don't know. UPS. I'm so frustrated. And my birth mom texts me and tells sends me a go outside.
So she's currently
sends me an email and lo and behold, my birth mom or my birth dad's sister is not looking for me necessarily, but we ended up starting a relationship. So here I am in the back of the basketball gym, and all my kids knew my story about me and my birth mom. But now here I am starting to develop this relationship with my birth dad. Being able to bring that to the training room and have very open, honest conversations with my kids really instills a whole new level of trust. And ever since then, since 2011, I've had my completed circle, and I've never looked back, and it's just a part of my story and who I am. And that I was able to have all of them at my wedding last year for the first time. That's the first time my biological parents saw each other since I was born. And it truly has been a conversation with anybody at any time. So that's the quick and dirty.
All right. So you were adopted from birth?
Yes, I was. My birth mom actually picked my parents on March 12th, not knowing if I was a boy or a girl. And on March 29th, I was born. And on March 30th, my birth mom handed me over to my parents and said, well, what do you want to name her? And my mom said, well, we really like the name. And my birth mom started crying and said, then this baby absence. I have a niece also named Deanna Marie, who's 2 years older than myself. Named her brother had stolen from her. So I was always meant to be a Rosado. I was always meant to have an older brother, you know, in her eyes, in her opinion. And since then, she's gone on to get married, and I have a half brother and sister with her, and a half brother with my birth dad. And though the relationship isn't always, you know, rainbows and unicorns with when you start introducing other people into your lives, it has been something that has truly been beautiful. And I feel like due to their sacrifice, I've been given just opportunities I would not have had. And they all know that as well. and they respect. Sometimes I call them Vic and Deb, my parents. They respect their role as my mom and dad. They refer to them as my mom and dad. And since then, the story of adoption has been able to open up relationships with either other teachers and professionals that I've worked with who are maybe in the foster care system or questioning foster care. My son's godmother, who I consider his godmother, she is now a foster parent. I've had athletes that have come through my training room that are in foster care who have been adopted that haven't, they had a voice or could adequately express how they felt being an adopted kid. And so I feel like that's, again, been another avenue to strengthen with my kids, because we've all been given the opportunity as athletic trainers to love on other people's babies. And is to get to do that. And by having this extra level of I guess life that happened to you, kind of strengthens that. It's real. You can, it's just being kids, and they respect that and appreciate that. So.
Right, I got plenty of questions about, kind of how you deal with those things or why you chose certain things. But I'm going to give Kelsey and Jennifer a chance to share their story, and then we'll kind of work that in. So, all right, Kelsey, you're up next. So, again, joining us. She's working at Pryor School. She talked about how she is working her dream job as an athletic trainer, kind of at the same school district she graduated from, and just loving it, enjoying it. Well, so, Kelsey, why don't you share your story?
Okay, so my story is probably a little bit different than most. I still am related to my birth family. I was born into a single parent home, so it was just my birth mom, and I had 2 older siblings. And I was born when I was the older 2 siblings were living somewhere else. I don't even know those reasons why they were living somewhere else, but they were. But my younger sister and I were taken into foster care when I was 4. The people came to the daycare that I was at, picked me up from daycare, and from there the process got started. I got put into was actually house. And they quickly got me involved in athletics. When I was 4, that's when I started playing soccer, and because of all of my they're siblings now, but back then my cousins all played soccer, so they just signed us up to play too. At the age of 6, I was officially adopted by my foster family, which was my aunt and uncle. So now my biological aunt and uncle are now my aunt. And so the 2 siblings that weren't adopted are now my cousins. Kind of confusing, but it is what it is. Back when I was a kid, I wanted to be a doctor. Had the cute little doctor kit that I would play with and stuff. And then that was kind of my goal and my mindset. Athletics throughout high school. Ran track and cross country. I didn't know what an athletic trainer was until I got to college. We didn't have one when I was in high school. So when I got hurt my freshman year, I had no idea what I was supposed to do. I was just suffering with the pain. And then my coach was like, why don't you go to the athletic trainer? Which I had no idea what it was. So he took me to one, and that's what I want to do. I don't want to do physical therapy. I want to do athletic training because I get to be with athletes every day. So that's how I chose athletic training. And I know that had I not gotten taken from my birth family and put into the foster family and then got adopted, I know that this opportunity of going to college even wouldn't have been a thought for me, because since I still know my biological siblings, I kind of saw the life path that they had taken, and I'm just my biological sister is now like a single mom herself, and she kind of followed the same path as her birth mom. So I know for a fact that me being taken out of my birth family was a positive thing for me in my life, because it brought forth a lot of opportunities that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So.
All right, so that's called, or at least here in Texas, we call that like kinship or fictive kin. I think fictive is when it's like a close family friend, but kinship adoption. And again, for people that aren't familiar with the foster care system, so foster, like the baby that we have is absolutely not related to us. If you the picture, she's black and I'm obviously very white. So she's not related to us at all, but this is a kinship adoption. You're adopted by your aunt and uncle. So, and then, again, that's even more questions I got there, just because that was through foster care and adopted. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. So cool. We got lots of questions for, it's just lots of things that I need to know, but questions about for other people about how they can be part of the process as well. Jennifer, are you with us? You ready to kind of share your story?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. So I'm a little older than your other two guests, and I was adopted at birth back in the 60s. I was born 67. There was a little more stigma, I think, with being a single mother, and a little more drama. So I was born on Christmas, and my adoptive parents did not take physical possession of me until January 26th. Because they were geographically close. And so they moved me through several temporary foster homes so that I wouldn't be traceable. And so, which ended up being a moot point. And directly being adopted really didn't have anything with my story of becoming an athletic trainer, other than my mom was a nurse and my dad was a teacher, and I'm now a high school athletic trainer. So I'm pretty sure I subconsciously melded those I don't think it was a conscious decision, but my mom being a nurse, when I became interested in sports medicine and athletic training, she would take me to I'm from the Champaign, Illinois area, and she would take me to little sports medicine things. I wouldn't know anything they were talking about. This was junior high. I wouldn't know the words they were saying, whatever, and she'd help explain everything to me and those sorts of things. I knew I was adopted from birth. The first book I ever remember my parents reading me is now out of print, but it was called The Chosen One. And it explained to adoptive children about how special you were, that your parents went and found you, and, all that. So there's never, ever been any, I have never had any mental or emotional angst over being adopted. My brother, who is not my biological brother, he has not either. He jokes now at our age that he wants to find his biological parents in case they've been sticking away $5 a week for him ever since he was born, but that's about the extent of his interest in it. So my mom passed away in 2008, and my dad's interest in my birth parents for some reason grew. Illinois has an adoption registry, and both parties can provide as much or as little information as you want, and that is shared if anything matches. And mine, I did sign up for that, and mine did not match. So, which means nobody from my biological family had reached out in the same way. So I did a Google search at one point. I'm pretty sure I found my birth mother. However, the fact that I have no emotional angst over being adopted, and I don't know what her mental status is about it, I feel no need to reach out to her and disrupt her life, especially at her current age. She'd be in her 70s. And so, I've had no major medical issues that I felt I needed information for. So, But as far as being adopted, I think that helps in a healthcare setting because the bloodlines are blurred, and just has been mentioned before, the kids, my student athletes, my patients are my kids from the time they get out of school until the time I let them go back to their homes. And that's how I treat them. That's how I see them. I have adopted, not legally, but I've taken many kids into my home. My eldest goddaughter lives with me, and she better be up for school. But she lives with me. I have 3 godchildren, one of each of whom's parents were one of my former student athletes, which I think I just don't see blood as what makes a family only. And there's plenty, I work in Washington, D.C., and I see plenty of blood family that are very dysfunctional and not healthy situations for the students. So I just think it makes us open to compassion and open to, having a familial feeling that maybe birth children who are with their birth parents maybe don't experience in the same way. I don't know, since I'm not one, but yeah, I just think it makes me very open to seeing all kids as my kids and treating them as such.
You mentioned you were adopted at birth. When did you know or find out that you were adopted?
I've never not consciously known. So literally, they read that book to us. That's the only book I clearly remember them ever reading to us. And I have clearly I wouldn't have known what adoption really meant, but I don't have any memory of not knowing I was adopted. And so it's always been a part of who I am. So never an issue. And all my life, people will say, "Oh my gosh, you look just like your dad," or "You and your brother look so much alike." And we just laugh. And, because technically we don't, but there's enough similarities. My brother, my dad, and I are all the exact same height, things like that. So, but it's just kind of a little family joke. We're like, haha, okay, thanks, cool, So.
All right, so
we had the same book too, Jennifer.
You might be a little older than I thought you were.
Well, I'm 35. I don't care. I'll say it. I'm 35. But yeah, I actually bought the book for a friend of mine who was fostering, and they've now adopted both theirs. And I bought it for them on either eBay or Amazon, and it was like used copy. And I was like, well, no crap, it's a used copy. And It came in, and this poor book, like, I bought it for like $4, and it still had it had pages taped into it, and the tape was all faded. And my parents had saved our copy because, like you said, I didn't know. I just didn't realize at 7 years old when I was like, wait, that's what that means, But yeah, we read the same book, and so I've bought it for friends of mine as well. But yeah, it's not in print anymore, so you have to get a used copy.
Yeah, and strangely enough, my mom kept a lot of our stuff, and that was not in her stuff. My dad passed away this summer, and it wasn't. Yeah, I don't know what they ever did. Yeah, I don't know what they did with it. So
yeah, we still have ours. I think I chewed on the edge of it. It's in a box in my closet.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I couldn't even remember the text specifically, but I just know that, it just speaks to how special you are, that your parents went looking for you, that, it was meant to be. Yeah. And so that's just always, and my parents, I feel like you do, I was placed where I was meant to be, and I couldn't have asked for better parents. Had a kid been allowed to choose parents, I couldn't have asked for any better parents.
Oh, 100%. Like my parents, I have a great relationship with them. And like I said, I am fortunate. Like, I'm probably a part of the 1% that has a relationship with my birth mom, who actually texted me. She's watching. I have a relationship with my birth mom and my birth dad and his wife, and all my siblings. But without the sacrifice that they made, and without my parents wanting to make the sacrifice that it takes to adopt, because there's a sacrifice there as well. That it takes to open up your own heart to love. Like you said, blood doesn't make family. And I've learned that more and more as I've grown up. I married a wonderful man who's got a daughter who, quite honestly, and my mom pointed out to me at Thanksgiving, she could not be any more like me some days. And the things that frustrate me about her, she's like, that's you. Like, I hope you realize that, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, I didn't have to birth her to love her. And so I feel fortunate that I'm able to bring that to the table and that background. But
yeah.
All right, so y'all have mentioned a couple of times that it opens up conversations and allows you to have more compassion. What are some of the ways that you have shared your story? Because it's not like you have a billboard or placard outside your thing saying, hey, I'm adopted, right? So everybody sees it. But what are some of the ways that you have shared that with your students and that it grows from there?
I mean, for me, it was other people have said things that spark that open up the door. I remember back in 2014, we were doing testing and there was like breaking in between state testing, and a teacher across the hall who I had only talked to a couple times was out in the hallway frantically texting her what is it called? You would know, Jeremy, when you have a foster kid, you're
Caseworker?
the person that works with the state.
Yeah, well, here it's the DFPS or
yeah.
CPS.
So she was texting her person about their little boy, and I was like, "Oh, how old is he?" And we start talking, and he's the same age as my son. And then she starts just telling this story about how he's in foster care and how her and her husband work at different high schools and how it's been challenging to try to get him to the necessary appointments. And so I just happened to mention, oh, I'm adopted. And it literally segued so much into our relationship that now her second child that she's adopted has my middle name. So, people just happen to open up the door. I don't go, like you said, I don't go around with a billboard across my, face or anything, but people, I think when you're in this profession, you just develop relationships differently. And we're all called to this profession because I think we all have very similar personalities. And so when someone says something, and I'm passionate about athletic training and adoption, and my husband and my kids, those are probably like my relationship with Christ. So, I mean, those are like my top 5. And so if somebody opens up the door to have a conversation, I'm going to have a conversation. And then you just start to get to know each other, and it reinforces that relationship and that trust that you end up having with somebody. So
Kelsey's the same way. She adopted me at a conference a couple years ago. I was lost. I didn't have anywhere to go. I was in between sessions. She's like, yes. It goes both ways. You can adopt older people too.
Yeah. One of my staff members yesterday, she commented on our new family picture, and she said, I want to be a Melanson. And she said, can I Venmo you? And so she Venmo'd me $1 and said, now I'm a Melanson. So
I like it.
I was like, well, that was easy. So, but yep. Just opens the door.
Yeah, it's funny how everybody, like when you say, oh yeah, I'm adopted, they're like, you're adopted? Like that was something you should have done. It's not like, just like you said, it's not anything, and it's nothing you just automatically bring up into conversation. Like, hi, my name is Jennifer. I'm an athlete trainer, and I'm adopted. So
just put it on the top of my resume.
Right. Jennifer Reeling, adopted.
Yeah. So people just talk because, you develop relationships. And
all right, Kelsey, you still with us?
I worked at a
Are you there with us, Kelsey? All right.
I think she's frozen on my end.
Yeah.
Can you guys
Mm-hmm.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, so it may be
Yes.
better if we go without the video, maybe slowing down. If you do just the audio, it may be better. So,
Can you guys hear
Yes.
Yep.
me? I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Kelsey, we can hear you.
No.
Are you
Okay.
there with us? All right. Well, we'll kind of continue on a little bit and see what happens. You mentioned was
I'm
you said-
trying to speak. I don't know if you guys can hear me or not.
We can.
one of the things that you mentioned was your
Okay.
mom and dad, and then your bio mom and dad. How did you decide once you started searching on what to call your parents?
I'm gonna have to change.
Was that a question for me? I didn't hear my
Yes.
name,
Yes,
but it
yes.
sounded like it was. Oh, okay. So for my bio mom, it really came down to the fact that when I first, so like I said, I have my little brother and sister. So when I found my birth mom, they were 4 and 7. And she waited until her and her husband, their dad, had come to see me. Crazy person. And before they told them about me, they basically went on like vacation together. They came out to meet me, and then when they went back, they took them some goodies. And by the way, you have an older sister, and this is kind of how it happened. And I think they kept it very vague for them, but they were also super excited. I think I remember my little sister saying something along the lines of like, she had somebody to like do her hair and play Barbies with her. So now they are 16 and 19. And so the first time I went out there, like I said, they were 4 and 7, and they're like, mom, mom, mom. And so I didn't want it to be weird when I was with them. If I was like, hey, Janine, and they're like, but you're our sister. And so I started calling her. I really don't even remember where it came from, but I call her Mama J, and that's what she is in my phone too. She goes by J9 sometimes because that's kind of how her version of Janine is spelled. And so I just started calling her Mama J. And then and again, when it was funny, I guess it deserves to be said here, when I found my birth mom, my dad was like, yeah, was like super pumped for me. And my mom was like, yeah, good. I'm super pumped for you. I mean, she had sat there and prayed with me. I don't know what was going to happen, but she struggled for a little while with that transition, and now she's good and secure in our relationship. And then the tables kind of turned when I found my birth dad. My dad was like, and my mom was like, yeah. So, but for him, so for my birth dad, I've called him a couple different things. It started with just his name, just Danny. And then we went on a vacation together about, I don't know, 8 months after I found them. And my half brother with him is autistic. And so for him, it took him years to really just kind of put it together. Like, how did my dad have a kid? Like his wife, Danny's wife, has kids from a previous marriage. So Corey has grown up with them. So he's always known them and knows where they came from because mom was married first. But you mean to tell me my dad wasn't married first, but somehow had a kid? Like, how does that happen? And so when I was around them for those extended periods of times, I just started calling him Pops because it was kind of like dad, but not dad. And that really was more for Corey's sake to help him with that, that kind of awkward newness. And now again, when I am able to make it out to California to go see my brother and sister and my birth mom, I really just call her mom at this point. But when they were little, to help distinguish, because they were in my first wedding, my little brother and sister were. And so to help them differentiate between who my parents were and their mom and dad. It was really more for them than it was for me, because I feel like I could call Janine, or I could call her mom or Mama J. And at this point, my mom does not phase her now, nor does it phase anybody else. So, but it's really more for the siblings than myself.
Gotcha. All right, Kelsey, you back with us?
Yes. Should you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so we were just talking about like how you chose to call mom and dad, or you said you were adopted by your aunt and uncle. So how did that play out for you?
Well, when I was 4, like when I first got put into the home, I called them Aunt Kim and Uncle Keith. Like that was how I referred to them as, and they made sure to keep it that way, because at first it was an unknown, like kind of what was going to happen with the situation, because the goal was obviously to be put back into my birth family's home. So they always just made sure that I knew them as Aunt Kim and Uncle Keith. And then I think it was maybe after my adoption was final is when they were like, you can, and I had 3 older siblings, like 3 cousins that lived there too, and they called them mom and dad. So that's what I heard all day, every day. And so I think it was just kind of like a natural switch for me. It was just like, oh, because everyone else called you mom and dad. But I do remember being like 7 or 8, and I remember crying to my mom because I was like, I don't know who my kids are going to call grandma. I was like, why is that even a worry at 7 or 8 years old? And I joke about it with my mom now, and she's like, well, do you have your answer? Do you know who your kids would call grandma? Like, well, yeah, of course. Like, I would have them call you. Like, you would be their grandma, just because she's the one that raised me. So now it's just completely normal for me for that to be my mom. Like when I tell people my story, I'm like, yeah, my birth mom is now my aunt, and my aunt is now my mom. And they're like, what? But it's kind of a confusing story. But now to me, it's just completely normal. And I think it's weird that I still see my birth mom all the time, talk to her at family events, talk to her all the time. Just hung out with my biological sister this past Saturday. So it's just completely normal for me now.
Yeah.
Kelsey, like I mentioned earlier, my goddaughter lives with me, and that's difficult sometimes because her mom is still in the area and whatever. So did your birth mom and your mom have any issues? Like, did your birth mom try to contribute to how you were raised or anything like that? Did it cause any conflict?
If something like that did happen, it was kind of kept under wraps. Like,
You wouldn't have known.
Yeah, they did their best to protect us from anything that would hurt our feelings or whatever. So we didn't see any of that conflict. It was, if that happened, it was behind closed doors. So I'm not sure.
So Jennifer, kind of continue on there, talking about taking kids into your home, having your goddaughter live with you. A high school student taken into your home and with you. It's a story that I've heard before, but it's something that would be difficult and, like a lot of legal type questions. So talk a little bit about how you foster those kids, even if it's not legally.
So I'm from Paxton, Illinois, which is a really small town north of Champaign. There, it probably wouldn't have happened because more people it's smaller and more people are directly involved, and the legal aspects would have had to been addressed. Unfortunately, here in Washington, D.C., in the school system I work in, a lot of my students are in very unstable home structures. And so it really was more of me just filling a need, and the parents weren't really involved enough to maybe it was a relief. Maybe in some ways it was a relief, and financially or otherwise, or we once the older children get to a certain age and can kind of fend for themselves, they let them fend for themselves because they're dealing with their younger siblings or whatever. So it's never really been an issue. I've taken great pains to protect myself. And some of them have been male students. So I take great pains. I never have lived alone when I've had a male student, living with me, those kinds of things. But it's really never been an issue. So I just think I'm in an environment where there's a little looser. I'm trying to be diplomatic. But yeah, it's just not been an issue. There's a lot of stuff though, like being in a low income school system. We're not back in school. I haven't been to work since March 9th, and there's not a lot of parental outcry for engagement or anything. I mean, there's a lot of apathy here. And so that's kind of the situation we're in.
All right. So I'm in the middle of foster care. Like I said, during the beginning of quarantine started for us around March 10th. And I think April 1st is whenever we got our foster daughter that we have now, that we had for, 8 months. So as we work through this process of, what is she going to call us? What are her siblings, her bio parents, that like, what are we going to name those things? And then just building and establishing those relationships. Talk to me a little bit more about the need to have that information. I know, Jennifer, you said you've never really had that. Kelsey, your situation is to where you kind of grew up knowing and connecting with both. And then Dina, with yours, it was at one point in your life. So talk to me a little bit more about just that situation of having the information available to be able to connect.
Having the information available to connect with our kids, or with like myself and my parents?
With your biological parents. Like, talk to me
with
just
my
about why that's
biological
important.
parent. I'm sorry, why it cut out for a second. Why it's important for me to connect with them?
Yeah, essentially like keeping it closed or keeping it open. Like if you hadn't been given or been able to get that information about your biological parents.
So for me, Jennifer, having like health issues, Kelsey, you still have a relationship. My birth mom was also adopted, which I've always known since I found out I was adopted, that she was also adopted. And then my mom passed away when my birth dad was very young. And he kind of had a little bit of a toxic relationship with his dad. But I think it's important to keep, if you have the ability, for me to know, because like I said, like I had health issues and things like that. I started to experience, I guess it wasn't health issues. I don't drink coffee. And so I was drinking a lot of Cokes to stay awake during grad school, for comps and tests and things like that. And so I started to develop these crazy kidney stones, like massive amounts of kidney stones. And so when they did a scan on me, they realized I had a little bit of an enlarged heart and some other things. And so that's really what sparked me wanting to know. I know plenty of people who, my brother, he has no health history as far as like families, or like his biological parents, and he's just fine. But for me, it didn't come down to like this, like I guess it did come down to this, like I have this, I just think as a female, there's a lot of females who just really want to be mamas at some point. And so along with wanting to be a mama, I think you kind of, you also want those puzzle pieces of what your past looks like. And that's really what it was for me, is one day when I became a mom, like I wanted to have as complete of a story as possible My birth mom has searched for her birth parents and has kind of been met, kind of like you said, Jennifer, where there was like a registry and stuff. You know, she dug a little bit deeper and sent a letter and didn't get anything back. And she's now at a point in her life at 53 that she's in a good place with that, I think, personally, but it took a long time for her to get there. For me, I think I just got lucky that I was able to fill those gaps to feel, for me, to feel whole. But that was a personal thing. I don't think everybody is like that, though. Like Jennifer said, she's good. You know, for me, when I met my birth mom, I thought like my story was good. I didn't ever anticipate meeting my birth dad. That was going to be lagniappe as far as I was concerned. But now I feel like I have this whole picture, and I'm able to, I guess the best way to put it is I just feel whole now. And it wasn't even, and I thought, and there's been different points in this journey that I've been on since 2008 that I felt like, okay, well that ends the book. That's the last chapter to this book. And then all of a sudden there's a sequel, and there's another chapter to the book of meeting my dad, and then chapter and another, you know, all these things that just kept adding on to my story and making it complete. And then last February, I went to my birth mom's house just to visit. I took my husband out there and we went to visit them because I hadn't seen her in a while. And she had actually, in a move, found this folder, and in this folder was pages from like a journal that she had written in while she was pregnant with me. And again, like I said, I thought my story was done. I was like freaking Star Wars, right? Like I had done movies 4, 5, and 6. And here all of a sudden was 1, 2, and 3 in this folder. And it was journals of while she was pregnant with me. And so to get to, because I think parents have this fortunate ability to tell their children that they birth their story of how they met their dad and how they maybe got married and bought a house, and then they experienced a gender reveal. Unicorns for some of these kids. And I know for my son, like I have the ability to tell him everything I experienced, but I didn't have that. And then when she found this journal, it was like movie number 3 for me. Like it linked it all together. Now I know my story. I know where my mom was in her life as a senior in high school, with an unplanned pregnancy, to a man that was in college, whose their parents didn't exactly see eye to eye. You know, she missed out on concerts because she was pregnant with me. She missed out on her senior track season because of me. And so being able to now experience that from her point of view in those journals, I just feel like I now view life a little bit differently. So, and like she's always said, she gave me a pair of earrings when she first found me, and they were like these little open hearts. And she said, I just had an open heart about everything, that I knew it would come full circle someday, that you were going to be a successful human because of the pain that I went through at 18 years old. And she's not wrong. And I have these relationships because of it. I have this opportunity because of it. And adoption really is really stinking great, and has the ability to be great. So I hope that answered your question.
Kelsey, before you, and I will say too, Jeremy, well, and I'll say to the group, to everybody, it's not that I'm not curious. I'd love to know. I'm 6 feet tall. I get that from, you know, those kinds of things. I'm curious what they look like. Do I look like any of them? You know, those kinds of things. I am curious, but yeah, not enough to disrupt someone's life for just plain curiosity. And yeah, if I had a need to know, then I would, but yeah, otherwise I just really don't. And the NATA is keeping me busy. So trying to find time to chase all that down would be difficult. But Jeremy, my advice to you would be, my mom had a greater knowledge of some of the actual details, and she never wrote that down. And prior to her death, I didn't care. And now I'm curious and I wish she'd have written that down or whatever. But it's your kid's choice. You know, just have the information and they'll let you know. Like my goddaughter, the kids at school call me Ma, or Miss Reeling, and she's always known me as Jennifer. Well, she goes to my high school that I work at or not work at right now. And so it took her a few months of hearing all the other kids call me Ma, Ma, Ma. Now she calls me Ma. And you know, but they'll find what they're comfortable with, and they'll let you know what they need to know. You know, just be open, and be ready for the day they turn and say something that you weren't expecting, good or bad. You know, the first time they turn and call you dad, roll with it. Don't make it a big deal. Just roll with it, you know, so they're not freaked out by it. And, but you know, it just let the child, you know, lead you to what needs to happen.
And that's how I am with my stepdaughter. You know, I don't call her my stepdaughter, but to just distinguish for you.
Yeah.
She would say, well, why can't I call Miss Deanna mom? And my husband and her mom had made very strict rules about that he was dad and she was mom in paperwork. I'm never going to buck that. I'm never, I feel like I get that from probably because of the perspective that I have the ability to come from. And I just told her, like, it doesn't matter. You can call me Miss Deanna for the rest of your life, and that's fine. You know, my athletes, like they used to call me Mama D, you know? And so, but she picked the name Yaya, and so she calls me Yaya for the most part. And every once in a while, her mom is currently not in her life on a day-to-day basis. And so because of that, I think she hears my son say, mom, 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 mom. And every once in a while she'll call me mom, and I just don't pay it any attention. Like, no, you can't call me that. I don't say that, you know, I just roll on. You know, you get to control that situation, and how you respond to that. But I do have foster parent families that I'm friends with. They call themselves middle mama and middle daddy, especially if they know that they're in the situation where it truly is temporary and transitional, and the kid is struggling with Miss Crystal or Mr. Michael. Maybe that's too much. So they call them like M&M, for middle mama, and MD for middle daddy. And so that has helped the 3-year-old to just articulate a little bit better, because he still sees his biological mom. And so, you know, that can be confusing. So that's what they go by, if names are important. But
Kelsey, do you have anything to add there?
I don't know. I just feel like my situation was different, so I don't know what I could add.
Okay, I didn't want to cut you off there. So we're talking about athletic trainers and how that shapes our healthcare. But if you know, I've been in conversations on like the secondary school Facebook group about athletic trainers wanting to be foster parents or adopt, but they just don't feel like they can do it. What would you say to those athletic trainers that are considering it or have heard of people doing it but never consider it for themselves? What would be some words of encouragement or words of truth about foster care and adoption?
Being a parent comes from your heart, and it'd be difficult to adopt as an athletic trainer, but it's difficult to have a biological child as an athletic trainer. And if that's what you want, and if that's what your heart wants, then you find a way to make it work. You know, you do what you have to do. You do what you need to do. And people who don't have the heart for it don't consider adoption. So if they're already thinking about it, they'll make it work.
I second what Jennifer says. I think that, yeah, you know, if you're meant to, and your heart is in the right place for it, you find a way to make it work. Just like with our athletes and our schedules and things like that. Like, I never said yes to something that I couldn't do, that I knew I couldn't follow through on. If I really didn't feel like I could do it, And my answer today is no. But when you pick to parent a kid, though it is hard, biological or not, it does, like we've all said, biology doesn't necessarily make family. You're gonna get reward. It's really rewarding to get to invest in a kid's life, whether or not you get them at 8 years old or 16 or 24 hours. The reward outweighs the risk and the time that you put into it. I've just, you, Jeremy, talking about fostering, it's totally different than what I experienced or Jennifer experienced as a kid, but now she's experiencing some version of fostering. Every family that I know that fosters, though, they'll send me a text and be like, how do I answer this question? Like, I don't know how to say, like, your mom made poor decisions, and that's why you're mine now, and I'm like, just tell her you love her, like, cause you do, and tell, her mom, though she made poor decisions, loved her enough to sign on the dotted line, even if it was temporary, to give they could not give you, a mom or a dad. And you just keep loving them. A personal saying for myself is I love God, so in turn I love people. And if the opportunity presented itself and somebody knocked on my door to foster a kid, as much as it would probably rock my world, like, if I'm in the position to do it, I, like Mama J, I have an open heart about it and think it presents itself to people who really want it to be presented to. So
I would say that fostering can be hard, just because you're potentially getting a kid into your home that has past trauma, so they're dealing with a lot of things that you as their foster parent would have to. Like for me, I had trauma coming into my new home just because I remembered so much of my birth home. Like I remember things that happened, and that stays with you, like that affects you. And so I remember having mom sit with me while I was crying at night, or just consoling me, just doing motherly things. And so I know that it was hard from her standpoint too. I think for her, like seeing how much change that she was able to put into my sister's life, the opportunities that we were given because of the impact that she and my dad both had on us, and we've grown into who we are today. And we definitely wouldn't be if it hadn't been for them coming in, taking us into their home, and raising us with two parents that love us unconditionally. So.
In my mind too, that's a unique, special situation because they stepped in without, like my parents couldn't have children, considered their options, decided on adoption, went through the process. Your parents were faced with a problem that they needed to solve and that they felt they had a heart to solve. And, they didn't necessarily with planning. And I mean, I'm sure they planned, they're like, hey, child, let's whatever that situation, by stepping up and welcoming you into their home. And that to me is a whole nother unique situation, to step in, you feel compelled to. That's amazing.
Yeah, I agree.
So we have 3 biological kids. We have 10, 8, and 6-year-old boys, and we don't need any more kids, right? It wasn't like, oh, we need an extra kid, and we don't need to have a girl, right? But it was like, we have a solid, stable home, and these kids deserve to grow up with something like that, even if it's just for a short time. And that has always been our motivation in signing up for ours. We wanted to do foster care, but then we weren't getting any kid. So it was either there was, a group of 4 kids or whatever. And so the state has rules about how many kids and the size of the house and how many kids can be in the house and nothing. But when we opened up to foster care, and again, we knew the goal was to restore the family. So to put the family back together. We know that, and then we know that our job is to just love on those kids and give them stability through the trauma that they've experienced for the time that they have. And so my job isn't to fix it or to be their forever daddy, but it's to love on them while I have them. If I get the opportunity to adopt this baby that we have, then that's what we hope for. But we also know that means that another family is permanently torn apart, permanently displaced. And so in each of these situations, they said they feel like it was a better situation for the kid in the end, but you have to consider all of the different things that go with that. And again, for us, it was only about providing a home for these kids that didn't have that. And so as athletic trainers, we do that. Often we're providing a safe place in the athletic training facility. Kids can come in and talk. And, as I've been talking, learning about the patient-reported outcomes, the care, the sitting down when you're talking to them, because some of them are used to being scolded and, beaten or things like that, just making them more comfortable. There's so much that I've learned through all the classes, through foster care. And I will answer any questions that somebody has about foster care, about we haven't done adoption. I've shared parts of the story throughout the podcast since we've been sharing. But if someone has questions and wants to get a hold of, I have those, their emails in the show notes. Way to get a hold of you. You're on mute.
That's probably the easiest or the best, whatever. I'm on social media. However, my social media is just my name, nothing fancy or whatever. So easy to track down. Yeah. And I would say, Jeremy, too, fostering, that's a whole nother level of special to clearly have a heart for the children and to know that they may leave as amazing. I'm so impressed with people who do that. And so I want to keep them. They're mine. So
yeah, set left. It was one of the toughest days. We only had them for 20 days, but it was sisters and you just get so attached, and it was really tough. But we weren't like, all right, we can't do this anymore. We're like, okay, well, we've learned some. That hurts. We'll never forget them. We, as a family, paint a Christmas ornament every year. So on our family Christmas ornament, we had something that symbolized their names on our Christmas ornament that year, because it was a big part of our life for that year. So they will forever be remembered in our household. Kelsey, someone wants to get a hold of you. I have your email, your school email here. Is that the best way?
Yeah, or social media. Like Jennifer said, I'm on all platforms, I think, possible. So that's a good way too.
All right. So you could search for Jennifer Reeling or Kelsey Graham. On the show notes. And then Dina?
Yeah, email is fine, or social media. My last name is Melanson. People struggle with pronouncing that or spelling that. It looks like Melancon. But yeah, that's pretty much easy to get in touch with. There was something I was going to say about your fostering, but I've lost it. It's about, just loving them through the season that they're in, whether it's temporary or extended. That's how we are with our athletes too. We love them for 4 years, or we love them for their senior year if they go 1 year. I think everybody comes in and out of your life for either a season or a lifetime or a couple seasons, or and those kids that you have the ability to make an impact on, for 20 days, those girls you gave them something that they're gonna remember. And I think every foster family that I know has probably had their kids for at least like 2 weeks at minimum. And I really think in those 2 weeks, though, you're pouring into them, but you're being changed also. And just like us with our athletes.
Yep. It's for
rock on.
Yeah.
Take all the babies.
That was another thing. We had said, no, we don't want babies, because we know everybody that wants to adopt wants to adopt a baby. And we're like, we've had 3. We went like a 2-year-old, right? Something.
We like our sleep filled nights.
Yeah, that was it, and she was 3 days old when this one came to us. And so it was like a brand new baby. Every 3 hours, 2 hours, you had to feed them and then burp them and change them. And yeah, lots of sleepless nights, but kind of like what you're saying, God put us at the right place at the right time. It was quarantine. We were stuck home. So it was just all the right situations.
Might as well.
Yeah. All the right situations for
Sleep when the baby sleeps.
I tried. So, all right. Again, if you want to get a hold of anyone here that was on the podcast, to ask them questions about their story, about adoption, about foster care, about why they chose, Mama J or whatever. And with the first set of girls, we'd said Daddy Jeremy or Mommy Sarah, because one of them was old enough to speak and to remember those, because we started with Mom and Dad, but then it's confusing if they're talking about us or the other one. So if you're considering it, just ask questions, just talk to somebody, and hopefully hearing their stories and our story, that you're open to it, or it at least changes your perspective that some of these kids are dealing with some really crazy stuff, and some of them just need you to listen and be mama in the athletic training facility just for that time. So get a hold of one of us, figure out how, like they said, if it's something that you are meant to do, something that you desire to do, you'll find a way to make that happen, whether adjusting your schedule, switching your job, rearranging your life. So whatever it takes, if that's what you really want to do, you will find a way. This is sportsmedicinebroadcast.com/adopted-ATs, so ATS, sportsmedicinebroadcast.com/adopted-ATS, and that'll have the ways to get a hold of them, and then some of the notes that I've typed up as we're talking. Any final words of wisdom, parting thoughts before I close it out, Jennifer?
No, just I think most athletic trainers do have open hearts, and that's what brings us where we are and makes us so safe havens for our kids. And we advocate for them all the time. We stand between them and a coach who wants them to play when they're not ready and all that. And we have that personality, and so that carries over. It carries over both ways. Work carries into your home personality, and vice versa. So. If you're thinking about it, just know you're probably already more than halfway there.
Kelsey?
I think, like what Jennifer said, athletic trainers, we have a want to make a positive impact on students and athletes. So fostering and adoption is a great way to make a positive lifetime impact on kids. So.
I'm good just following up with them. It's all the same. You have the opportunity as an athletic trainer to take care of people's most prized possession. For most people, their kids, right? And so just keep loving them and keep being great athletic trainers, day in and day out, and your impact will be felt. And like Jennifer said, if you're thinking about it, you're probably almost already there anyway. So might as well just commit.
Jump in, get it done.
Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. Mom owns a daycare, and they take foster kids all the time. And basically when we first started dating, he was like, if the opportunity presented itself, I was like, yeah, because I'm not birthing another one. Like the first one tried to kill me, so the opportunity presents itself, then yeah, like obviously, you know, where we are right now, we just really love each other and we're still in a honeymoon stage. And so we just want each other all the time. But, if our home fulfills a need, then I think we'd probably do it. I mean, we do it all the time with our kids, like you said. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I've ever said it, but with the adoption, it was never really a thought in my mind, like ever. And then one night, my wife said, "Well, what do you think about like adoption?" I said, "Okay, let's do it." And then probably like 6 months later, something like that, I heard a podcast and it was talking about adoption. I said, "Hey, let's look at the classes." So I think that week we looked at the class. Like the intro class was like the next week. So we're like we rearranged our schedule, and then just all of a sudden it was like boom, 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 and we just all right, we did it. And later my wife was like, we never really like fully discussed this. I said, "Hey, you said you wanted to do it," so I said, "Okay, let's jump right in." And so there he is, did it just like you were saying.
So what a blessing for both of you that you found partners that were supportive and had like minds.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, all right, well, for Jeremy, again, this is sportsmedicinebroadcast.com/adoptedat. So for Jeremy, Anna, Kelsey, and Jennifer, that is a wrap. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.